Welcome to Fight Back Radio, a production of fightbacknews.org, taking you to the heart of the people's struggle. I'm your host, Richard Berg, and today our guest is Faayani, Aboma, Mijana, and they were the spokesperson for the most recent March on the Democratic National Convention that happened here in Chicago. And so what we want to do today is Faayani will give us a kind of behind the scenes look at how the coalition operated and some of the things that they had to deal with that over the course of a long period of time leading up to the convention itself. And then we have a clip we're going to put in the middle. We on the first day of the convention was the largest march where there was people from all over the United States came, and Fight Back Radio went out amongst the crowd and talked to people from all the different contingents, people from all over the United States, and we have some interviews that we want to play for you of why people decided to come to Chicago to protest. And so we have those things. Then we want to take a look forward to where we're going next. Faayani, thank you for being our guest on Fight Back Radio. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Richard.
So I want to start out. Let's start at the beginning. I want to go back to it was in the spring of 2023 that it was announced that the Democratic Party was going to have their convention in Chicago. I think it was right about the time that our new mayor was just elected. The old mayor, Lori Lightfoot, had been lobbying for it to be here, as had the governor, J.B. Pritzker. At that point, how did the coalition come together? Was it something that took a long time, or was it a quick decision? Or can you talk a little bit about the early days of the coalition to march on the DNC?
Yeah, so the moment we learned that the DNC was going to be in Chicago, a handful of organizations, U.S. Palestinian Community Network, Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, SDS at UIC, we collectively decided that we were going to have a march on the DNC. And so the demands that we were going to center, they hadn't crystallized at that point, but they were going to be demands from different areas of the movement. So demands to stop police crimes, for community control of the police, demands around legalization for all undocumented people, demands that were coming out of the Palestinian community and the Arab community, so on and so forth. And that was the approach early on. And then October 7th, of course, changed everything. It changed the political dynamic of this country. Palestine became the principal issue. And so we decided as a coalition, by that point, we were a bit larger. We decided to center demands around Palestine. And so our central demands were stand with Palestine, stop all U.S. aid to Israel. And at the same time, we kept those people's demands that we initially had arrived to, because those people's demands are directly connected to those demands for Palestine. For instance, in my area of struggle in police crimes, the Israeli occupation forces that are inflicting the genocide are training the police departments around the country that are killing Black people here. And so that's just one small example of how the demands are connected. And so that's how we got the coalition and the demands.
Well, let me go back to, I want to spend a little more time in the early days, because it was successful, the marches by any stretch of looking at this, in my view. But in the early days, it was before October 7th, as you've pointed out. So it was a different kind of thing. The groups that you mentioned, it was an interesting group because they're all local chapters of groups that have national reach. The Chicago Alliance is part of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. The Students for Democratic Society at UIC have a National Students for Democratic Society, and USPCN has possibly its strongest, or one of its strongest chapters here in Chicago, and but also as a national organization. So in the early days, when you were getting together and you were starting to figure out what to do, What was your vision? Did you have I mean, you couldn't have envisioned, I don't believe, October 7th happening. So what was the thought, and how were you thinking about building it out, in terms, what was your projections in size and magnitude and things like that?
Well, I think what was clear to us at the time, even before October 7th, was that there was a sense, across all sectors of society that the Democrats weren't delivering on their demands. The Democratic Party sailed into office in 2020 among historic turnout among, working and oppressed people, and specifically Black people, on the back of the George Floyd rebellion. And we remember very clearly how the Democrats made these promises, not only of passing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, but closing the cages on the border. All these different things that, and I'm speaking to specifically immigrant rights and the fact that people were being interned at the border, separated from families. And so, it was very clear to us in the movement that the Democrats had not followed through on any of the things that they said they would. And so what we imagined before October 7th was we were going to have this march of the very working and oppressed people that the Democrats claim to represent, marching on them and showing how they hadn't delivered on what they said they would. And that still remained to be the case after October 7th, but I'll let you ask the next question.
Well, let me keep going down those lines. So October 7th was whatever that was when the beginning of the escalation of the conflict in Gaza and in Palestine, and that was led to a huge movement. I think student encampments, I think, certainly propelled things this last spring. Um, but within your coalition, I mean, you were going along as if, okay, we got all these demands that are somewhat equal, and now you just made a decision to raise one above the others, and clearly, at the protest, that was the demand. It was not that the others weren't there; they were, and they all got voice. But the thing. The international and the national press were looking at, and the thing that we were projecting as protesters was that this genocide is being funded by the United States. That whatever, and we can go on, but I think the demand was end all aid to Israel. But could you talk a little bit about that transition, and was there pushback within the coalition at all amongst any of the organizations that maybe had other things that had their demands, whether it be whatever, immigrant rights or labor or whatever it is, or police accountability?
As far as I recall, there was no pushback. I think it was pretty clear that, the principal issue in the US political dynamic was the genocide, and the fact that the Democratic Party was playing the leading role in aiding and abetting it. And they were working hand in glove with the Republican Party. And it no longer became just an issue of raising people's demands, but it also became an issue of recognizing that this genocide that the Democrats were aiding and abetting was directly connected to our deterioration of rights in this country. And so it was a no-brainer. It made sense. There wasn't any pushback. And at the same time, it wasn't like we were necessarily demoting those demands from before. It was just we were picking out a specific demand to give, greater urgency. And I think the demand around Palestine, specifically stopping US aid to Israel, it's important to center that because it is, as I said, directly connected to all the other demands.
I want to talk to you next about the battle of the permits, and this was an issue in Milwaukee with the Coalition to March on the Republican National Convention as well. But so here in Chicago, the coalition put, very early on, put in and started to talk to people and try to, resolve this issue far in advance. And it didn't turn out that way at all. But can you talk a little bit about the battle to first, why did you want to have permits? I heard one of the chairs of the coalition who's been on Fight Back Radio, Kobe Guillory, said, I've been in scores of marches. I forgot how many he said, but and I've never asked for a permit, but here we are asking for a permit. And maybe I'll put that same question to you. Why do you want? Why is a permit important? And can you talk to us a little bit about it wasn't just a matter of filling out paperwork and going forward. You had a number of issues there.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to reiterate what Kobe said. In my time organizing, I've never fought for a permit, and many of us never have. But at the same time, this was a high-level national security event with all the federal agencies and, the police department and all of these different forces involved in so-called security of it. And so we needed this permit to ensure that people were protected to the greatest degree possible. This permit was an insurance policy against police repression. That doesn't necessarily mean that the police wouldn't repress you, but we wanted to have all our bases covered to ensure that we could have a march that anyone could come to. That was what we intended from the beginning. We wanted families, people to be able to bring their children. We wanted undocumented people of all ability statuses to be able to come to this march. And so a permit was one of the principal ways that we could ensure that, because we wanted to have a mass march. We wanted to bring in all sectors of society and all sectors of the movement to march with us. And so that permit was really important. And at the same time, when we first applied for the permit, we were rejected by the city. And it was two different permits. There was a park permit, a permit to be at the park, and there was a permit for the march route itself. And our park permit was never responded to for a really long time. And I can come back to that later. But what got most of the press was our fight for the march route itself. When we first applied for a permit, the city denied us of the routes that we wanted. We filed four separate applications: the Chicago Alliance, Anti-War Committee, USPCN, and SDS at UIC all applied for different march routes. But the critical thing that we wanted in our march was to be within sight and sound of the United Center, which is where these genocidal Democrats were going to be. And the city denied all four applications. And so we went and we appealed the city. And in the appeal, our appeal was denied again. And so we decided to take the city to federal court because, we made the argument that the city was violating our First Amendment rights to protest within sight and sound of the United Center. The route that the city gave us when they denied us was at Grant Park on Michigan Avenue, which is 4 miles away from the United Center on Columbus Drive, I believe. So basically, had we not engaged in the struggle that we did and just kind of taken what the city gave us, we would have been marching 4 miles away, nowhere within sight and sound of the United Center. It very well could have been just this thing. And not to say it wouldn't have been visible, but, it was very important that we be within sight and sound. And so that's what our legal struggle entailed in federal court, us fighting for the right to march within sight and sound. And so it was a long and protracted process in federal court. And in the end, what we got was a march route that was within sight and sound of United Center. It wasn't as long as we wanted it to be. And it was on side streets. We were making the case in court that we be on main roads and within sight and sound and have a march route that was long enough. And in the end, what the city was willing to offer us was a march route that was 1.1 miles. We wanted that one that was 2.4, and they gave us some side streets. And the federal judge, ultimately affirmed the city's offer of the shorter march route that's on side streets. Fortunately, because of our legal struggle and our mass mobilization around the legal struggle, we were able to have sight and sound of United Center. And then coming back to what I was saying.
Let me ask you about that, if I could interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
So I heard that over and over again for, as all these court battles, we want to be within sight and sound. And, I think, you have to say you had a victory in that sense because you weren't, for those that aren't from Chicago, Grant Park is actually in '68. That's where the police riot happened in one of the places that they beat the crap out of the protesters. But it's yeah, 4 miles away. I didn't do the GPS, but that sounds right to me. Um, but I heard you, as well as Hatem Abedea, who was the other spokesperson for the coalition, talk over and over again about we want to be within sight and sound, and we're going to march from Union Park to within sight and sound, with or without a permit. Can you talk a little bit about where this sight and sound thing comes from, and then also this decision to say that you'll march without a permit if you didn't get one. Obviously, you didn't have to, and you did march within sight and sound of the convention center.
Yeah, so in regards to sight and sound, it was very important that we be able to protest, and the target of our protest, that being, Democratic Party leadership who are converging on Chicago for this convention, be able to see and hear us. And so that, without a doubt, happened. We had sight and sound at the United Center. And then the other part, which is, marching with or without a permit, that was something that we said from the jump. This is an extenuating circumstance. There is a genocide happening, and we're not going to let whether or not we get a permit stop us from marching on the DNC, because the people responsible for this genocide need to know that we're not with it. And so that's why it was important that while we were fighting for a permit, we made it clear that whether or not we get a permit, we're going to march. And in the end, we did get a permit. And the important thing about the permit fight is, we have to fight for everything that we get. We have to try to win that all that can be won. And that's why we engage in that struggle for the permit, not only because of the sight and sound and getting that, but we also needed to engage in struggle to get there. And in that process of struggle, we were able to bring more and more people into our movement to march on the DNC.
Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned there's two permits. So the other permit was for Union Park, and just days before the march was supposed to happen, you were having difficulty getting a stage and sound. They said they wouldn't allow sound. I don't know what that means. I don't know if they can't have a bullhorn, but obviously you need major sound if you're going to have a march like you did of tens of thousands of people. And even I know this became the thing. You probably got sick of talking about porta potties, but obviously, if you're going to have a march, throughout the day and whatever, not have any restroom facilities for people, that's a major issue, and was something that people could identify with. Could you talk a little bit about that, and about this other permit, and why there's two permits, and what you guys all had to go through to make this thing happen?
Yeah, so I just talked about the permit for the march route, and then there was the permit for being at the park itself. And if I'm not mistaken, for City of Chicago Park District, if you don't hear back on a permit application for a park within 2 weeks, you automatically get approved. Well, that wasn't the case here. We hadn't heard for months, or almost a year, for a park permit. And then days before the rally itself, we had learned that our park permit application was accepted, but we wouldn't have the right to have a stage. We wouldn't have the right to have sound amplification. We wouldn't have the right to have porta potties. We wouldn't have the right to have tents and canopies. And so, in the city of Chicago, for festivals that come through town, when they get approved for a permit, they get all of those things. They can have their stage, they can have their lighting, their sound, their porta potties, the whole works. But they were denying us that. And the case that we made, and which is true, is that they were making a content-based decision, which is that they didn't like the fact that we were protesting for Palestine. And when I say they, I mean, those within the city apparatus, the holdovers from the Dailies and the Lightfoots and the Emanuels, the old guard, who were doing everything they could to stop our protest from happening, because they're loyal to that Democratic Party leadership. They're loyal to that order that is, for this genocide. And so what we did in response to that was we mobilized the community and we brought a bunch of cameras from the press to City Hall and we rallied. And ultimately, the city conceded that we could have our stage and the sound amplification. They didn't allow us tents and canopies, and they only allowed us up to 7 porta potties, which was nuts. So you can imagine for Monday, where there were 20,000 people, only 7 porta potties, and the issues that arise out of that. And again, the takeaway being that the powers that be don't like that we're protesting this genocide. And so at every stage in the lead up to this protest, we faced stiff pushback from the police department, all the different agencies, and the city government that was trying to make life very difficult for us to protest. And it was through continuous struggle that we were able to have this protest.
I want to talk to you a little bit here about the press. One of your major jobs as a spokesperson was to work with the press. There was a media committee that dealt with some of this. But this was, you were challenging, the foreign policy of the United States government and the president and the vice president, who is now the Democratic nominee. And this was at a spectacle where people from all over the world came in, people from all over the country. In 1968, the slogan was "The whole world is watching," because they were, and they were again this year. And so, can you talk a little bit about the challenges of a coalition coming together, a little over a year before before the actual marches on the convention, and some of the things that needed to be done, and some of the challenges that you had to face as a spokesperson in trying to accurately get out our message and get out what we are trying to say.
That's a hard question. I would say the principal challenge, well, I mean, there are a lot. I mean, first and foremost, the media is in the hands of the enemy. And so, how do you utilize that apparatus to get your political message out there? And oftentimes, the extent to which people within the media are willing to cover you is, if they're fear mongering about potential violence at your protest, or all they want to talk about are the permits. That was kind of the struggle early on, but I kind of think ultimately we make the news, the masses make the news. And if you get enough people involved in something, the media has to respect you to some degree. Does that mean they're going to all cover it honestly? No, but we had to work within those contradictions. And so early on, I think the media we were getting wasn't ever fully honest about what we were doing. Maybe it was like diluting our demands. Like, a lot of times media would say they're demanding a ceasefire. And it's not that we don't want a ceasefire. We want a ceasefire on the Palestinian resistance's terms. And, but our demand was to end all US aid to Israel. And the media didn't want to touch that with the stick. And then at the same time, we were having, our build-up actions in the lead up to the march on the DNC. And those build-up actions were basically marches that we were doing around the different people's demands. And early on, the media wasn't wanting to cover those actions. And so that was the early struggle, but it was our organization and the fact that more and more organizations continue to join our coalition that the media couldn't ignore us anymore. And so it then became a case of, how do we find friends within the apparatus to disseminate our political message? I don't know if I'm answering the question or if you want me to keep going.
No, no, that's good. That's good. I want to pivot a little bit though, because one of
Yeah.
the things that the media repeatedly raised was this issue of violence. In 1968, there was a convention in Chicago that nominated Hubert Humphrey, and he was a vice president. So there was parallels that the presidential candidate was supporting an unpopular war in Vietnam. And the violence that happened in Chicago in 1968 at the convention was by the police. And so it was police violence. And but that didn't seem to come out in the press too much. And so the question got raised over and over again: were these going to be violent protests? And even I know some very good supporters of the march were hesitant to go because they didn't want to be involved in a violent situation, or they didn't want to bring their children to it. And can you talk a little bit about, as a spokesperson leading up to this, other than probably being annoyed a lot, how did you deal with this issue of violence, coming up over and over and over again? And and what things, did you do to try to, ensure not just dealing with the press, but to, in terms of outreach and dealing with our supporters, to let them know that, we were going to have a family friendly march?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a common tactic of the enemy to, whether conscious or unconscious, to delegitimize what you're trying to do by fear mongering about potential violence. But from the very beginning, we were always saying we intend to have a peaceful, family friendly march. But unfortunately, every freaking interview was a reporter asking about 1968. And so at this point, I just have like a robotic response, which is the true response. It's we intended to have a peaceful, family-friendly march, and what happened? We ended up doing that. And so I think all you can really do in the face of that is, we're not here to educate the press about the police in 1968 were the cause. Our focus is just sticking to the message and keeping it tight. And so that's what we did. We were just like, we intend to have a peaceful, family friendly march. If there's anything in common with 1968, it's that, again, the Democratic Party is showing itself to be on the side of war and genocide and atrocities. And so, that was our approach. That's how we related to it. At a certain point, it didn't even bother me anymore. It was kind of like, yeah, that's expected. Sidestep. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you about I want to, again, pivot a little bit here. I know you were on
Yeah.
the media committee, and that was the main piece of what you were doing. But we're gonna have we're gonna play a bunch of interviews here soon of people that showed up at the march on Monday. And so, can you talk a little bit about? I mean, people came, and our listeners will hear in a few minutes here. People from all over the country. People from Colorado, California, Texas, Florida, wherever, many, many places. And how did the outreach work on this? And how did you go from a few local organizations saying, "Hey, we should, have a march," to this massive march of whatever, tens of thousands? Um, and from people all over the country. How did you guys how did you map that out and make it work?
I mean, I think the principal thing is the fact that you're raising demands that are very relevant. It's like the genocide, as I said, is like the principal political issue in this country. And so by raising those demands, it's almost like inevitable that, not totally inevitable, you know what I mean? But whenever you bring in enough people, it's kind of like it snowballs. And then soon enough, you have over 270 organizations in your coalition from, last I checked, 22 states in the US. We even had some international organizations. So there was that aspect of, the what this coalition was marching for spoke to the political moment, and that lent itself to people joining our ranks. And then there was also, um, the methodical groundwork, the methodical media work that was involved. In the lead up to the march on the DNC, we had people flyering all over the city. Every neighborhood there were teams, hitting businesses and neighborhoods and festivals and all those things with flyers about the march on the DNC. And then, we had a media team that was disseminating the message through social media, the amazing graphics, and the videos and the photos. And then there was also like the press, which was what I was focused on. And I think press, I didn't get to really delve into it, but the press is in the enemy's hands, but at the same time we have to acknowledge that it's there and that the masses consume the press. And so it was through our continuous work around the permit that we started making friends within the media, people who are sympathetic to what we were doing. And we were finding that more and more reporters were willing to not just talk about the permits, but were willing to talk about our demands. And it was not just from small scale outlets, it was national outlets. They were wanting to do video interviews about why we were marching, so on and so forth. And this all combines to our slogans trickle out into everyday people's households. Like I would be walking down the street and someone would be like, "Hey, I saw you on TV the other day, like great work," and that's kind of how I knew that if normal people were seeing our message and resonating with it, that to me was kind of a metric of our success, that we were reaching people, and our demand of ending US aid to Israel and all the other demands were connecting with people. And that came out of engaging with with the enemy's institution and finding ways to utilize it for our benefit.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So I mean, I want to go to the clips here, and so I mean, you'll see that the diversity of the people that were. You'll see the people speaking for themselves, who were in the park on Monday, August 19th, before we started the rally, and some of you'll hear the noise in the background at places. Sometimes the audio is a little difficult, but our production team does a fabulous job here, so I want to thank them for that. But let's go to the clips right now.
We have 270 organizations in the coalition. It might be more now. That was the number the last time I checked. These are organizations from all around the country. We had buses coming in, people flying in. We are a very, very broad coalition politically as well, representing people from all over the people's movements, from labor, from black liberation, from reproductive rights, from immigrant rights, from LGBTQ rights. This is a very big coalition because everybody has an interest in fighting for a free Palestine.
Hi, I'm Mick Kelly, and I'm with Freedom Road Socialist Organization. The reason I'm here is to stand with Palestine. A genocide is being carried out against the Palestinian people, and this event today is all about resistance. It's all about justice, and it's all about freedom. And I'm so glad to be here with thousands of others who think the same, feel the same, and we're going to take that message to the Democratic National Convention.
Hi, my name is Sara Mahmoud. I'm here at the March on the DNC. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, with the Jacksonville Palestine Solidarity Network and the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. We're here today to hold the Democratic Party responsible for their genocide in Gaza, a genocide that would not continue without the full-fledged support of the U.S. government at the expense of U.S. taxpayers and residents, and we say shame, and we want to see an end to it.
Hi, my name is Khaled Hamu. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and I'm with Students for a Democratic Society. I'm here today to tell the Democrats that we stand with Palestine. Students stand with Palestine, and they're united in that. End all U.S. aid to Israel.
Hi, my name is Shireen Horazek. I am a rank-and-file union member from Minnesota. I'm here today with Minnesota Workers United, a coalition of rank-and-file trade unionists in Minnesota who fight for class struggle unionism. I'm marching today in solidarity with the people of Palestine to say that the genocide has to end, that we need a ceasefire now. We need liberation for the people of Palestine. The U.S. needs to stop sending military aid immediately.
My name is Carlos Montes. I'm from East Los Angeles, California. I'm here in solidarity with everyone everyone protesting to support the struggle of the Palestinian people, to denounce the DNC, Joe Biden for genocide, Kamala Harris for continuing to support the genocide, and we're demanding that they stop all aid to Israel.
Hi, I'm Steph York. I work with the Climate Justice Committee in the Twin Cities, and we are here standing for Palestine and standing against the Dems' greenwashing of the climate issue. We know that war is one of the biggest and most destructive forces driving climate change in the country. And the genocide that's happening in Gaza is damaging the people and the planet here, and it's damaging to the people and the planet in Palestine. And so we are here to stand in solidarity and to protest the Dems for their complicity in action, both on the genocide and on climate change.
Hi there, my name is Eric Dorland. I'm a union member of Teamsters Local 638 out of Minneapolis, and I'm here in solidarity with the Palestinian people and to say that we have to oppose genocide, we have to oppose apartheid, and labor must take a strong militant stand towards these things.
My name is Kim DeFranco. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota, Women Against Military Madness. The reason I'm here in Chicago is to demand that Democrats stop the genocide in Palestine. If they want our votes, they have to come out stronger. No more genocide. That means stopping doing an embargo of weapons to Israel.
Yeah, David Vance here, retired steelworker, here to support the struggle of the Palestinians, here to support an end to this genocide in Gaza. And we're here to demand the DNC. This has to stop, and we're here, you vote with your feet. That's what we're doing today. You can go vote in November, but today's the best day. You vote in the street.
Hi, my name is Erica. I'm with the Atlanta Alliance, and I'm marching on the DNC because Palestine is the #1 issue right now in our country. The Democrats need to stop funding the genocide. We need to put pressure on Kamala and all of the Democrats to stop the genocide and to end the mass incarceration.
I'm Alex Hahn. I'm the executive director of Indian Times Magazine, and I'm here today because I believe the Palestinian people should be free.
All right, you all. My name is Jasmine Smith, and the reason why I'm here because I'm a part of an amazing national organization, the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. I'm one of the executive members and also co-chairs. And the main reason why I'm fighting for justice today is because 2 of my loved ones have been kidnapped by the crooked CPD, and we are tired of them abusing, brutalizing, and stealing our loved ones and wrongfully convicting them. So my demand is for us to get justice and for us to get our loved ones the due process that they deserve and to give them their freedom and to tell the Democrats they want our vote. They need to do right by the black and brown communities that's constantly suffering for their lack of, care.
How you doing? This is Hassan Marajda, HUSAM, I'm with the U.S. Palestinian Community Network, Chicago chapter. We're here today to make a lot of pressure, to put a lot of pressure on the Democratic Party, on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. They're not welcome in Chicago. They don't get a pass. They don't get a pass. 10 months of supporting and funding this genocide and stalling. Every other day they come out and say, oh, we're talking, we're doing ceasefire talks. Yes, we're almost there, we're doing ceasefire. Only to stall and only to give Israel more weapons and Israel more time to murder Palestinians, to bomb Palestinians, to kidnap Palestinians. It's unacceptable. We're going to be today in Chicago, we're going to be loud, we're going to be very clear that this is the same movement that elected Joe Biden in 2020. It's the same movement that is against Kamala Harris. It is against Democratic Party's policies of genocide and mass murder of Palestinians.
My name is Brad Siegel. I'm a member of the Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee, which is part of the Legalization for All Network. We came down on buses from Minneapolis to Chicago today to protest outside the Democratic National Convention. We also were in Milwaukee a few weeks ago protesting at the Republican Convention because as an immigrant rights group, we have to protest whenever Trump shows up anywhere that we can get to. they had signs inside the Republican convention, mass deportation now. So we were outside demanding legalization for all and end to deportations and end to border militarization. And that's why we're here at the Democratic National Convention too, because as bad as Trump is on immigration, unfortunately the Democrats often just copy what the Republicans do and do Republican light. The border is still being militarized in an increasing manner under Biden. The deportations are still happening on a massive scale. There was an executive order that Biden did just a month or two ago restricting asylum, which is a violation of international law. So we're here to demand that the Democrats stop mass deportations, stop militarization of the border, and do legalization for all. If Ronald Reagan, one of the most conservative presidents of our lifetimes, could do a mass legalization in 1986, there's no reason that Democrats can't do one today.
Hi, I'm Tulsi. I am with the Chicago Alliance. I'm here today to bring our demands to the Democratic Party about the genocide that's happening in Gaza. We want to end this. We want the money towards school and education and housing. And I'm ready to march.
Hey, I'm Jess Sundin. I'm here from Minneapolis from the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice. We are an organization that works around police accountability. So of course we're a branch of National Alliance Against Racist and Political Oppression, one of the main organizers of today's event. But in addition to all the other demands, we're also absolutely here for Palestine, to stop the genocide and say no to the Democrats who aren't very prepared to help us do that.
My name is Eliza Schultz. I'm here in Chicago with Teamsters Local 705. I'm here to protest at the Democratic National Convention as a member of the labor movement. We stand for the right to unionize and the right to strike. For too long, the Democratic Party has taken labor for granted while they broke the right of the rail workers to go out on strike, and they refuse to change the labor law that benefits corporations at the expense of workers. So we're here marching, here with the big protest at the Democratic Convention, also to stand with Palestine and end U.S. aid to Israel, where trillions of our tax dollars go to support genocide and war.
My name is Liz Rathburn. I am here from Chicago, and I'm a member of Students for a Democratic Society at UIC. I am here today because we believe that the student movement must stand with Palestine, and students all over the country have taken up that call. Students have mobilized, organized. When the press wanted to ignore it, students started the encampment movement and the student intifada. We are building a student movement to stand with Palestine, and we are going to march on the corporate Democratic Party to show them that they cannot ignore that growing mass movement.
Hi, my name is Bill Chambers, that's CHAMBERS. I'm here representing the Muslim Journal. I'm writing an article on the protests. Really the other reason I'm here is I've been a Palestine activist for over 20 years. Been at many protests like this, and this is one of the most important things that's ever happened in the Palestine movement. The Palestine movement has grown across the country. We saw that with the 80 different colleges that had encampments and like that. We can see a lot of police repression against Palestinian activists. But this is going to be a great day because we're going to see all these Palestinian activists from all around the country pushing the Democratic Party to do the right thing.
I'm Dakota. I'm with FRSO. I'm here from Chicago. Just here to support Palestine and defunding of Israel, the war against Palestine.
My name is Angel Naranjos. I'm here with SDS at UIC. Born and raised in Chicago, and I'm here because there's a genocide going on right now in Palestine, and the Democrats are complicit. They are operating with the Israeli regime at the highest level and facilitating and funding this genocide with our tax dollars. Billions of our tax dollars to be used for funding food, housing, healthcare, education, for jobs, instead of being sent to kill innocent people abroad. So we stand with the Palestinian people. We say end USA to Israel. We say free Palestine, and end the genocide. Victory to the Palestinian resistance.
Hey, my name is Gio. I'm here with Students for a Democratic Society at UIC, and I'm here to protest to stop sending aid to Israel.
All right.
And the rest of the demands we have for that money to be put into our communities, for healthcare, for housing, for rent, for jobs, for education. Money for education, not for war and genocide.
Hello, my name is Tom Burke. I'm here from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm the
organizational secretary for the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, a group of revolutionaries around the United States. And we're here at the March on the DNC to let Biden and Harris know that we stand with the people of Palestine. We want Palestine to be liberated and to live from the river to the sea as a new nation with many different types of people there. And we support their struggle. Right now, we demand that the U.S. end funding for Israel and the intelligence that they're giving the Israelis to kill Palestinian people, especially women and children. And we will make this happen inside the United States. We will bring an end to Israeli apartheid and Israeli occupation. Long live Palestine. Free, free Palestine.
Hi, I'm Aboma with National Students for Justice in Palestine. I'm based in Chicago, and I'm here today with the student contingent protesting the DNC, which has funded the genocide for the last 11 months and continues to try to fool the American public into thinking that anything will change with President-elect Harris.
Hello, my name is Darwin. I'm from Gaza, Michoacan. I am here in Chicago, and we are protesting for peace, love, and the end of genocide. Thank you very much.
I'm Kobe Guillory. I'm one of the co-chairs of the coalition to march on the GNC, and we're here demanding an end to all U.S. aid to Israel. We've been funding this genocide against Palestinians in Gaza with our tax dollars for the past 10 months. That's 319 days as of today. We need to put an end to it. All those war criminals that are gathered at the United Center today and all throughout this week, they need to hear from the people. They need to understand that they will not be allowed to rest until the genocide is stopped, and until they spend that money, instead of on funding genocide, until they spend that money on a people's agenda, on housing, on education, and on healthcare, as well as other things that people need.
Okay, so I mean, you could see there the many voices that we were able to capture there, and there were so many more at the park that day. Just a wide variety of people from different places, ages, and different movements that all came together. And the unity around Palestine, especially, was very high. And I think it's a reflection of the work that the media team and others in the coalition did. So, I mean, what were your reflections on Monday? I mean, it was, whatever, 20,000 or so people marched, yeah, you must have felt good about that.
Yeah, I felt great about Monday, having prepared for the last year, just, to have a march of that scale takes so much planning. Everything from how we're going to keep people safe to how we're going to navigate the march route to, the program for the speakers, to how to engage with the press, to what to do about the police who will inevitably be there. Like, there's just so much planning involved in that. And so it was huge. I remember at the beginning of the march, before we started, when we were trying to get everyone from the park behind the banner, just the for lack of a better term, like electricity, like you could feel everything sharpened and everyone was like antsy. But throughout all of that, I never felt nervous. I just felt like, I know we put in a lot of work for this. I know we have a collective. Everyone knows where they need to be and what they need to do. And so it's just a case of doing it. And so, I'll never forget that feeling of the beginning of the march and looking around and seeing all my comrades and being like, here we go. And so, it was awesome. Like, I don't think, I'll remember that forever. And then the march itself, there's a catharsis in all this buildup, the legal struggle involved in getting the march route, the mass mobilizations, and then at the same time, the Palestinian organizations in the city have been protesting pretty much every week, sometimes multiple times a week for almost the last year. And it was kind of like this march took things to an even higher level. Like, it required even more organization to bring about. And we had that organization and we were able to realize it. And it was almost like to see the different forces in the movement converge behind Palestine and all the other people's demands. Like, it was powerful. I'm sorry if I'm not, this is just stream of consciousness. So, marching and seeing that we had like 7 blocks, like I would look back and see, I remember in my mind thinking the march ended, at this visual point, but no, it just kept going and going and going. And I was like, wow, we did that. That was a collective thing. And there's the good feelings that come out of it, but then there's the political aspect, which is, this coalition is composed of the very people that the Democrats claim to represent. There were Black people, there were Arab people, there were Chicanos, there were women, there were queer people. Like, we were well represented at our protest. And these are the very people that the Democrats are claimed to represent. Well, here we are saying that if y'all don't end this genocide, if y'all don't end USA to Israel, then we're not with this current order, basically. And so the powers that be really took notice that Monday. And so much so that, Joe Biden sometimes goes off script and he was like, those protesters have a point. And obviously, words are words. But I think it speaks to the fact that the powers that be couldn't ignore our protest and our level of organization and our level of unity. And, at the same time, we need some action.
Yeah. I mean, I think, some of, what Biden said, shows that the protests were working. Not enough. We have to keep going, but because we haven't won it yet, but that's something. So yeah, I want to, look at, so that's the first day of the convention, and it was exciting. I was there, and we had great weather. That was nice. And but through and through, I mean, it was a success, and I congratulate you, Faayani, and all the others on putting this thing together. Well, let's go through the week then. I mean, a lot of things happened during the Democratic convention. You mentioned Joe Biden spoke on Monday. There was protest on Tuesday by some small factions of people who had whatever. And then Wednesday there was a lot decent sized Arab protests that some of the local Arab organizations called. And then the Coalition to March on the DNC, which you're the spokesperson for, or one of the spokespersons for, called for another march on Thursday, which is the day that Kamala Harris accepted the nomination for president. But during the week, because of what happened Monday and because of what we were maneuvering for on Thursday, other things happened too. There was uncommitted delegates were demanding to have a Palestinian speaker at the convention. And I know organized labor, Sean Fain and some others, have come out, and there were 7 unions that came out and said that they should end military aid to Israel, and that they should let the person speak. And just let me go on a rant here for a minute. People, Fight Back Radio listeners know that I've spent decades in the labor movement, and from the late 40s to the 50s, when they wiped out the left wing of the labor movement, the labor leaders have been in lockstep almost all the time with the State Department. And to see unions start to say things like we should spend the money on education and healthcare instead of on killing people in Gaza is a big step. And to have them say, Sean Fain, the president of the United Auto Workers, who just led his union, just struck the big 3 auto companies and won. This is significant. This is things that I think the Democratic Party looks at as their base. But could you talk, let me pivot back though, Faayani, could you talk a little bit about the march on Thursday, and why you called for a march on Thursday, and what happened there?
Yeah, so, we thought it was important to have a march on the opening day, to set the opening tone, and then at the same time on the closing day to set the closing tone. And so the second day um, was we it was funny because we went into it thinking it would be a bit smaller. We went into it thinking it was going to be like a Chicago protest. I remember going into the press conference and being like, yeah, this might be a little smaller, but no, like we had the same amount of cameras there at the press conference as the Monday. And although the crowd was a bit smaller, it was still large. We had 11,000. And it speaks to the fact that the masses are inexhaustible. And the masses want to march. The masses want to protest this genocide and protest the very people responsible for it. And so the second day was just as powerful, but we were even more well rehearsed for it because of the Monday. And I think there were more right wing forces at this one, and I think it speaks to whenever to kind of colloquialize it, whenever you have haters, that means you're doing something right. And there were some right wingers who were there, and we handled it well. We moved through it, and that was like a blip, hardly even a blip. We had this really successful march, and then at the tail end of it, we were on Lake Street, kind of on the way back to the park, and we decided to hold Lake Street, for at least an hour. We just kind of stopped the protest, and the reason we did that was because Kamala Harris was about to go on stage and speak, and we wanted to be protesting while she was speaking, and so we held Lake Street. And in fact, CPD threatened mass arrests. But we held our ground. Ultimately, if you have the numbers, you can kind of do whatever you want with a protest. And so we held our ground, and we chanted for an hour and a half. And then we moved into the park and wrapped it up. And, by that point, it was just like sheer relief. Like we made it. And it was really affirming, not only to ourselves about like, a collective brought this about, and like, it instilled our faith in the collective. I think it was just like, the movement felt tighter and more unified, and I'm excited to see where things go from here.
Yeah. Let me ask you about there's been criticism from liberals that we even had this march. Why are there's no question in my mind that when Biden stepped down and Harris stepped up, there's just an enormous amount of energy. This week we learned that an enormous amount of money is flowing into her campaign coffers, and Donald Trump, the other candidate, is a repugnant figure by any stretch of the imagination, I think. And so, so people will say, hey, you guys are helping Trump out, and you're this and that. How do you answer those kind of questions? I mean, you probably got them from the media as well.
Yeah, I mean, we got criticism from all sides. Yeah, so that approach, you're going to hand Trump the victory, which is, what Kamala herself said. Our view is that if the Democrats lose, it's on them. It's on them for aiding and abetting a genocide. It's on them for not following through on any of the promises to our movement. So if they lose, it's their fault. And it also is a racist talking point that basically says that your role as a working oppressed person, as a Black person, is to vote blindly for the Democrats, which we don't stand with. We push the issues, we make our demands, and if the powers that be don't listen to us, then they don't deserve our vote. And so that was one of the criticisms. You're going to hand Trump the win, and then at the same time, we also recognize that Trump is a danger as well. The March on the DNC marched on Trump in July in Milwaukee, and when he showed his face in Chicago, we protested him. And so the reason we're marching on the DNC is because he was in Chicago and we're in Chicago, right? So that's what I would say to that. And then we also got other criticisms, like, why have a march? Why fight for permits? Why not escalate and all that stuff? And it's kind of like, we win by building a mass movement. It's all about the balance of forces. And, that's why we seek to reach all who can be reached and bring into our movement to force this change. It's all about putting pressure on the powers that be, having a long-term political goal, which is ending US aid to Israel, and having the collective discipline and the vision to see that through. And so having a march to us was more important.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'd say this too. I mean, I know I was in Milwaukee to march on the Republican National Convention, and I saw a lot of people from Chicago and other places that I also, that were also at the march on the Democratic Convention. So just like you. But what I didn't see in Milwaukee that much was, and there's exceptions, of course, but the people who were making those criticisms, the people that were saying, "Oh, you're helping Trump" or whatever, they weren't there marching against Trump with us. They've been on the sidelines.
Yeah,
So that,
and if I could add
sure.
one thing, which is just so absurd, is when not only that, but people like that are like, do you really want a Trump presidency for all that he did to Arabs? And it's kind of like, how much worse can it get for Palestinians in Palestine right now, where there's this horrific genocide happening? At least 40,000 people dead. The entire Gaza Strip displaced and reduced to rubble. 2 million people displaced. And so when people say that shit, it's like the most absurd, most it's racist, like, oh, Trump's going to make it so much worse when it's already quite freaking bad.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yes, absolutely. Let me ask, I want to, you're reflecting on some of your experiences here. You've talked about the media and how you've gotten some stuff through, and as a spokesperson and using your media committee. But I mean, I'm interested also in, I mean, we look at the corporate media or the bourgeois press or whatever we call it. Is there nuance amongst them? And then also, I want to ask a little bit about alternative press too. I guess Fight Back Radio might be considered press, and in our own small little way. But and how did you deal with movement press? Other, and did you see differences in people that you could work with and those that are not? I mean, some of it's hyped up, like, you see Fox News and MSNBC, posturing for one party or the other. But what was your observations through this process in dealing with the press?
Oh, I could be here all day explaining it. We had a pretty
Well, we don't have all day, but if you could squeeze it down a little bit, that'd be good.
I know. That's why I was kind of like revving up. We had a pretty open door policy. Like, as long as you weren't, off the wall media, we were going to talk to you. Whether you were smaller independent media, and obviously like mainstream media, like, we were interviewing with all of them, and we also had to be open in terms of, like, the outlets that you would have thought would be like antagonistic towards you. Like, for instance, like, obviously Fox News is terrible, but funnily enough, we found that some of the reporters at Fox News were like a lot more straight shooters than reporters from outlets that you would think would be straight shooters that weren't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think we had to be willing to struggle with all those different contradictions that, like, the rank and file reporters at Fox News, were somewhat sympathetic to us and were just going to give us some straight questions that we could take however we wanted. But basically, the way that we dealt with it, going back to what I was saying, open door, and doing our best to control the story, if that makes sense. Like, some reporters don't like to take any direction whatsoever. They're trying to write what they're trying to write, and in those cases, you have to kind of like work within what's there. And then there are some reporters who are willing to cede, like, a lot of what they're writing to you, whether it's, centering your coalition for most of the story, or even asking you, what do you want to tell me about? it's just kind of like you get the full range of things, and basically the point is that there's struggle in everything. You have to kind of struggle within each story to get more real estate for your political message, or get them to talk to the people that you want them to talk to, and not talk to like the freaking ADL. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like there was struggle and everything, and then at the same time you had to understand the different outlets that you were working with. In some cases you had a reporter that was sympathetic, but a producer that wasn't. And so in those cases, it's like the reporter could write it a certain way, and then the producer would come in and just take a hatchet to it. In other cases, you had reporters and producers that were sympathetic to what you were doing, and that gave you even more range to have a story that was better. So I think it's kind of like it took a very scientific approach in taking each situation for what it was and struggling within it to get the best story that you could. And ultimately what came out of it, as I said earlier, is that, the slogan of "End USA to Israel" is almost like standard at this point, and that came through this concerted struggle and this scientific approach to engaging with media. Because ultimately, if you don't engage with the media is going to create their own narrative. They're going to speculate as to what you're doing, and if you don't get what you're doing, if you don't tell them about what you're doing, then they're far more likely to sort of veer into the purely bourgeois lens of what you're doing. So I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. So I mean, I want to, we're starting to wind down here. I want to congratulate you on a successful week at the the march at the Democratic National Convention, and I think there's no question that in my mind anyways, that the Democratic Party did not want to talk about Palestine, and the fact that tens of thousands of people came to Chicago, or Chicagoans marched and raised the issue in many different ways, but primarily through the marches that you were a spokesperson for, it made a difference. But right now, today, Kamala Harris is the Democratic Party nominee for President of the United States, and Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. And so, I mean, where do we go from here? What are the next steps in your mind for our movement?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the whole movement, but the purview of the coalition was.
Yeah, but you're a part of it. I mean, you have an opinion. So you're right. The movement will go where it goes, but you're an experienced leader, and so what you think matters.
Yeah, fair enough. It wasn't within the purview of the coalition to sort of say who to vote for, and I know you weren't asking that. But if you ask me, the next steps are continuing to push the issues. USA to Israel isn't going to be ended through these backdoor deals, or like, sitting with the Democrats in a meeting room and like understanding each other and like trying to reach some sort of consensus. No, it's going to happen through force. And so those to me are the next steps for the movement, continuing to grow our forces and bringing more and more people into organization, fighting organizations that are willing to confront the ruling class. And so to me, that's what I think it is, pressuring these politicians to do things.
Okay. Well, thank you for being our guest on Fight Back Radio, Faayani, and thank you. This has been an enlightening interview.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it was quite a week here at the Democratic National Convention here in Chicago, and I want to thank Faayani for being our guest and giving us a backdoor insight into some of the things that go on in planning and running a demonstration of that size, and especially one where there was so much press and international and national focus on this. Also, it was an incredible week. People turned out, young, old, black, white, brown, Arab, whatever. The people turned out in big numbers, and we changed the debate. The Democrats did not want to talk about Palestine, and it was all, the reporters wanted to talk about. I just wanted to say something also about the end of the week. There became this debate about the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris especially would not allow a Palestinian speaker to speak from the stage, and it's disgraceful. I mean, it's like they had just one Zionist after the other talk, I think. But to not allow even a discussion of what was going on and just to have theatrics, I think was shameful. But we have to demand more than just a voice. We have to demand what the coalition asked for, is that end all aid to Israel. We need to use the purse strings of the United States government, which is substantial in this case, billions and billions and billions of dollars, to get justice in Palestine and to get self-determination for the Palestinian people. And our protests, I believe, are having an effect, and we need to just keep pushing. So I think that's our road ahead. Any case, I want to thank our production team, especially this week. It's been a difficult, we had all those interviews, and it was a difficult one to do. And let us know if you like this style of Fight Back Radio, what we did here a little bit. Send us an email, richard.fightbackradio@gmail.com. And let us know if you like this or you want to see more of this kind of thing or not. And then also, if you did like it, or even if you didn't, I suppose, retweet it, tell other people about it, have them check it out. There was a lot of voices in this episode from people across the country telling you what they were thinking, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it. So it was a lot of work, but I enjoyed it. And it was a lot of work for our production team, so I thank them again. Shane Tremley, Vince Olson, Natalie Pranis, and Dodd McColgan. I'm Richard Berg for the entire Fight Back Radio team, saying until next time, all power to the people.